Hello everyone. Welcome to BuildU.com by DSC VIT. We at DSC VIT have consistently been involved in training and teaching the student community. We want this event to be an educational and worthwhile experience for all our participants. Today, I, Anshul Bum,
and I, Gurnehamad Kaurdeen Saab,
will be helping you build your own portfolio websites. We hope that everyone is excited because we are pumped up. Let's dive into learning and building to increase the ambit of our knowledge. So before we start building our own portfolio website, I hope that everyone has got these prerequisites ready as shown on the screen. If not, let me just show you how to install VS Code. If yes, we are all set to proceed. So is VS Code and the preferred browser is Chrome. And we are going to install some plugins on VS Code as well. Then we'll make a GitHub account. As well. And just make sure that you have a picture of yours ready. So as you can see, you can go to your Google search and just search VS Code download. The first link, just head over to that. And yeah, depending on your operating system, you can just download. Once you've downloaded this, you can just you can just open your folder and you can head over to this section called as extensions. And we have to download 3 extensions today. One is the auto close tag. You just need to install it and the extension will be enabled globally for your project. The other is color highlight. As you can see, again, you just have to install it. And the final one and the most important one is the live server. Yeah. Just make sure you have all these 3 plugins installed. Once you've installed, we are set to proceed. Now, before we start with the workshop and delve into more technical topics, let us know why it's important to have your own portfolio website. The importance of having a professional online presence is more important than ever, and an online portfolio will certainly increase your visibility across the internet. Creating a portfolio website allows you to share and showcase your work as well as your skills with all the employers you'd like to work or intern for. More importantly, it's pretty cool to have your own website. Just imagine how awesome it would be when you type your own name on Google search and your website pops up in the list of the search results. Now, before we dive into the world of web development, I think we should check out a few portfolio websites to really understand the power of web development. Here are 3 of our personal favorites. Let's check out one of them, which is made by our DSC members itself. So as you can see, here we have a website of a full stack developer at DSC VIT. You can notice how aesthetically appealing the website is. Now let me just go to portfolio and click it. See, this is extremely smooth, has great user experience, and it's just beautiful. We're also going to make a beautiful portfolio website today. Similar. Now let's take a look at the design that we'll be following for our portfolio website today. And at the end of the session, each one of you will have your own website. So as you can see, this is going to be a landing page, which is the home page, which will have an image, a navigation bar, which will help you navigate through different sections of your portfolio website. And it will have your name over here and your skills and interest right next to your picture. When we scroll down, we'll have an about page, which will have 3 compartments. One will showcase your skills, the other your education, and the about section will tell you a lot about yourself. And finally, we'll have a download CV button right over here. A download CV button will enable any visitor on your page to download your resume. Finally, coming to the last page, we'll finish it off with a form which allows people to send messages to your email. And we'll have some font awesome icons of social media where people can directly reach out to your social media handles. Now that we have understood the design and what we are going to make today, let's take a look at the roadmap. Now, the roadmap is basically the flow of what we learned today. The whole workshop is divided into 5 sections. Kickstart, the first section, will basically cover the basics of HTML and CSS. Then we'll proceed to the level up section, where we'll learn a bit more intermediate CSS. We'll code along the first page, the home section, and the navbar as well. Moving on, we'll move to the ACID section, where we are going to code along the second page, the about part. And we'll even embed the forms in this third section. Finally, in the Hooray section, we'll be embedding those font awesome icons. We'll learn a bit of frameworks, what is UI UX, and the footer we finally completed. After fourth section, you have your portfolio website built. Then we delve into more technical topics like what is Git, how do we use GitHub, what are developer tools, how can we host our own portfolio website that we have created, and we'll conclude the session. Now that we have a gist of what we can achieve with web development, let's talk about the 3 main languages we must learn of web development. The answer is HTML. Now, HTML is often misinterpreted as a programming language, but it's a markup language, which means it is written using a certain syntax to display text and content in browsers in a very specific way. If we were to speak metaphorically, it's like laying out the foundation structure of a house, as you can see in this picture. CSS helps us style the websites. For example, it's like the paint, the doors, the windows to a house. So this is, the more the beautiful house looks, the house is going to look more beautiful. Now, to make our websites look more beautiful, we are going to be using CSS, which is cascading style sheets. Now, what is JavaScript? Just imagine, like JavaScript would probably help me fetch electricity on clicking a button in my house, right? So JavaScript helps you to add more functionality to your websites. The 2 languages that we'll be extensively using today are HTML and CSS. We'll use a bit of JavaScript as well. Now, you can achieve a lot if you learn the basics of these languages well. Moving on. Now, the HTML boilerplate. It contains all the necessary tags that we require before we start any web development project. We can use a shortcut on VS Code and the boilerplate would be created automatically. Now let's head over to our VS Code and just try this out. Now, as you can see, there is a small icon here, new file. Click on new file, write the name of your file, .html. All HTML files should end with HTML. Click enter. Then type the exclamation mark and press tab. Ta-da! We have the whole boilerplate created for you all. Now this boilerplate contains several tags: HTML, head, body. These are the tags that we are going to be looking at now. So as you can see, the HTML tag is the top level tag of every HTML document, which generally marks the start and the end of an HTML file. The entire code base of this file is placed between this tag. Moving on, we'll have the head tag. Now the head tag is very important. The head tag contains meta tags as well as title tags, and it is always situated between the body tag and the HTML tag. Now, the head tag also contains the link to our cascading style sheets as well as JavaScript. So it's very important to organize our head tag as well. Now, talking about the meta tag, in simple words, meta tags are defined as text snippets that are useful in describing a page's content. They're small content descriptors which help the search engines in knowing what the page is all about. This part in your head section is not going to be rendered on the web page. You can't see it, but it is very important for search engine optimization and for the website to work fluently. So as you can see, we have come down to the next tag, which is the title tag. Now the title tag is very important. Now whatever is written here is going to show in your tab. Now let's just try this out. Let's write, this is the title. Now just save the document with Control S, go here and press go live. So as you can see, whatever we wrote between the title tag, it's going to be represented here. So just imagine if you're surfing on a browser, you have lots of tabs over here. So the user will always see this part, right? So you should have the title crisp and as apt as possible. Make sure your title is very important. Now, whatever we write in the body tag is going to be rendered on the web page. Now, for example, let's just type some random text. Okay, and just save it. Let's head back to our browser, and yes, you can see that the random text has appeared over here. So whatever I'm going to type in my body tag, it's going to be shown over here. Now we've learned the basics of all the basic HTML tags. Now we need to add text to our website, right? We need to add text to our website, and the best way to add text is the heading tags and the paragraph tags. So the heading tags ranges from H1 to H6. There are 6 tags, and the paragraph tag is just a simple P tag. Let's head over to our VS Code and just try this out. Let's just type H1 and let's type out heading 1. Let's just save it. I hope you guys are coding along with me, and just go back to the browser and you can see, yep, we've got our heading 1. Now this is the default font size and the boldness that we are getting by H1 tag. Now let's try all the tags from H2 to H6. Let's just type out all the tags. Now H3, H4, Similarly, you'll have the h5 tag, and last we'll have the h6 tag. Now just let's copy paste this. And yep. Now just save your document once again. Let's take a look at a browser. Now, as you can see, from H1 to H6, the font size is decreasing, right? So this is the default styles and the properties that have been added to our tags. Now let's try out a paragraph tag as well. As the paragraph tag, the name suggests that we mostly embed paragraphs in this. So let's just type some random stuff. Now just save it. I'll just give you all guys 20 seconds to just cope up if you have left behind. And so you're done, just save the document and just head back. Yeah, this is how a default paragraph tag and whatever the text is embedded is going to look on your web page. That's great. Now, as you can see, all the tags over here has a closing tag, right? The body tag has a closing tag with a forward slash and the name of the tag. The H1 tags, the H6 tags, each tag is closing tag. The meta tag is a self-closing tag. We don't need to close it. Now let's try something else. Let's move on. Now, as we can see, we just tried this out, the paragraph tags and the heading tags. Now, images. Now, images are a very important part of your websites. It makes your website look more beautiful and aesthetic. Now, all the image tags are self-closing tags, means they don't need to be explicitly closed. The image tag has two important properties. One is the source and the other is alt. Alt is the alternative text or the description for your image, and source is the path is a path for the image. So let's just try this out. Now just copy paste. Now I have an image over here. Just drag and drop it in this, so it will be copied in your project, right? Now let's try the image tag. We have the image. Now let's try the image tag. Image. Now the source of the image. Whenever you are specifying the source for the image, just follow this trick: a full stop or a period, followed by a forward slash, and then you'll have all the files that are currently in your project. So we have this image over here, and then alternate image is image of a lady. Just save it, the source as well as the alt. Just save it and head back. Yes, we have our image over here. So as you see, when you're embedding images, it's going to have the default, the image actual width and height. So if you want to have some specific width and height, we will do it with our CSS. Now that we have added an image to our website, we'll try the A tag. The A tag is the anchor tag, and it helps us create links to pages or other sections of our website. It just has a single attribute, which is href, and the href attribute contains a path to the target. The target can be anything. It can be some section of your web page. It can be another website. It can be anything. So let's try out this A tag as well. Yep. Just href. You can just copy paste it. and just add some text over here. Just save it. So when we click on this text that will appear on a web page, we'll be redirected to this link. Just save the document and head back. Now, as you can see, when we click on this, we are going to be redirected to the website, to the href that we had embedded right now. So yeah, we've been taken to the specific website that we wanted to. Right, let's go back. And now that we have learned about the A tag, now what are lists? Now lists are, we all know about lists, and we basically know that there are two types of list: unordered list and ordered list. Now unordered list, as the name it says, is not ordered. It can be bullet points or square bullets, or it can be anything. And the ordered list will have some chronological order to it. So let's just go ahead and try it out. So as you can see, for ordered list, it is going to be OL tag. Just press enter, and every list is going to have items. So if you want to give some item, you can just type li. That is going to be a list item, and you can have let's try it out. Apple. Let's try another one. Google. And my favorite, Netflix. Let's just save it. Guys, you all need to code along. That's how you're going to learn. Okay, now let's just save this document. Go back. And as you can see, we have an ordered list in that, and the way we have listed the items, it is rendered on the page: Apple, Google, and Netflix. Now let's try an unordered list. The tag is UL, unordered list. Again, it will have list items. You can just copy paste the same, and you can see the difference. Okay, save it. Just give you all guys 20 seconds. Just if you're lagging. Okay. Now I guess everyone is with me. Let's just save the document, head back to our page, and yes, we have the default bullet points as our unordered list, and this was our ordered list. So these are the basic tags that we are going to be using today. Let's wrap it up with another tag, which is my favorite and which helps to be a lifesaver when you're using HTML and CSS. Whenever it's front-end development, divisions and sections are very important. So let's just come over here. Now, what is a division? Now we'll understand the importance of divisions once we learn CSS, or when we understand the concept of classes and selectors. But just let me show you how we can embed that tag. Now let's just cut it out and just try a div tag over here. And so basically in your body, there is a specific division that we have created here on your web page, and we are just embedding this. Yep, just save this. And in this division, you have all your headings, all your h tags. And just head back. Now you'll see there's no difference, right? But we have kind of accumulated all the tags in the single div tag, so that when we are making it look beautiful with our CSS, this will help a lot. The div tags will help a lot. Moving on, the button. We all know that each and every website has buttons. Now let's just try and create some buttons ourselves. So the syntax is basically button, and you should close the tag, and whatever you're going to type between the button tags, it's going to show on the button. So let's just type click me. So this is going to be your button. Let's just yeah. Let's just save it. And you can see you have a button. Now currently it has no functionality, but this is how a basic button would look using HTML button tag. Right. Now that we have learned all about HTML and the basic HTML tags that we are going to use, now let's make those HTML tags look more beautiful. Now this is the part where we are going to add windows and paints to our house so that the house actually looks like a house. So the CSS syntax has basically three important factors. One is the selector, the other is the property, and the third is the value. Now what is selector? Selector is basically you need to select the elements from your HTML document, and then you have to add some properties and values to it. Property can be anything. It can be the font size, it can be the background color, it can be your font weight, it can be anything. So you can have more than one properties. And the value is you can change a value or you can add a value. For example, if I want the color of the text to be red, you can take a look over here. Now I have selected the H1 tags. All the H1 tags has the property, should have the property color, and the value of the color is set to red. So if we have H1 tags on our pages, all the H1 tags will have the red color. So let's just learn a bit more about how we can embed CSS in our files, and we'll try it out. So there are three important ways to add CSS to our HTML files. One is the inline CSS, the other is internal CSS, and the most important and the best way that is used by all the developers is the external CSS. Now, what is inline CSS? Now, inline CSS is basically you're adding, let's just try it out. Now, as you can see the heading tag over here, now I'm going to add inline CSS for this heading tag. So I'll just type style, which is going to be an attribute for the H1 tag. Then I'm going to choose the color to be blue violet. Okay. Now, as you can see, I didn't select the element because I am directly applying the style to it through inline CSS. This is what inline CSS means. We are adding the attribute style and we are adding the CSS in that attribute. So let's just save it, head over, and you can see that our heading tag is now changed. The color, the black default color, it's changed to blue violet. Now the other method is the internal CSS. The internal CSS is where you add the style tag in your head, and then you change the CSS properties or add CSS properties to your elements. Let's just try this out as well. So this is your head tag, right? And we'll just add this style tag over here. Again, we'll choose the H2 tag now. All the H2 tags on our in our HTML document, and let's just change the color to, let's say, brown. Okay, let's save it, and once you've saved it, just head back to your live server, and you can see, yep, your H2 tag is now has the color brown now. So this was the heading 1 tag. We used the inline CSS. For heading 2, we used the internal CSS. Now we'll talk about the external CSS, which is the most important one, and this is what we are going to use today. So we need to create a file, a different file, like we had the HTML file. The same way we'll create a .css file, and this CSS file will be linked to our HTML file, and then we can make whatever changes we want in the CSS file. So let's just go back to our project, and let's just click the similar icon, new file. Let's type styles.css. You can name it anything you want, but it should end with CSS. It's a CSS file because. Now let's select the H3 tag over here, and we are selecting all the H3 tags in an HTML document. Open, close the curly braces, and then yeah, you can have the selector, you can have the property, color, and you can change to red, just save it, go back, and yes. Okay, so what happened? We can't see it, right? It's still black. The H3 tag is still black. Why? Because how are these two files connected? They aren't, right? So we need to link both of these files. So to link these files, you have to go back to your head tag and you have to embed this line of code. Link, where this is going to be a style sheet, cascading style sheet. And where is it located? Where does the document need to, where does document need to search the CSS file? Again, whenever you are using href or this src tag, just press period / and you will have all the files. You can go to styles.css, press enter, control S. So we have saved both the files. And let's go back, and yes, now we've got the H3 tag color changed to red, right? So we've learned about how we are adding CSS to our HTML files, right? Now, how can we select the HTML elements? We learn about that as well. So again, there are three types how you can select the elements. First is the grouping selector that we were using right now. Now the problem of grouping selectors is, like, if I have 5 H1 tags in my entire web page, and I want 3 of them to have green color and 2 of them to have red color. Now if I use H1 and just specify the property, it's gonna be a very big problem, right? So we go on and we learn about ID selectors as well as class selectors. Now IDs are very specific. Now, for example, let's take an example right over here. We have made an example here. So I have given ID heading, and we have embedded some text that this is the heading for my portfolio website. Now, if I want to select this particular element having the ID heading, I have to go to my styles.css and have to write the same name of the ID preceded with a hash. And then again, we have to do the same thing, the property and the value. So if I've put the property here as color and I've changed its value to pink, we'll see that the H1 tag will have pink color. Now select class. Now the class is the class is similar to ID, but we'll discuss the difference between them in just a while. Let's first understand what our class is. So the class also has some name to it, and you can add classes to your tags. Again, it should have a proper name. The names are also very important. Like the name of the IDs as well as the name of the class are very important. So that if you have a very big project and if you want to make changes, it becomes easier for other people who are contributing in that project as well as you. So as you can see, when we are selecting this element with the class name, we have to go to a CSS file. We have to embed the same name, para1, as you can see here, and it should be preceded with a period. Now what we have done here, we have selected this element p tag with the class name para, and we have changed its background color to pink, and this is how it will look. Now let's just head over to our boilerplate.html and let's just try this out. So if I give a p tag an ID of heading blue, and just let's go to our styles.css. Now if I want to select an ID, how do we do that? Yes, first it should have a hash. Now what was the name of the ID? I'll just copy paste here so that I don't make any typos. Just paste it, open close curly braces, and let's just put the color to be blue. Yep, let's save it, head back, and you can see that your para tag is now blue in color. Now let's try out a class as well. Let's take this h6, let's take this button and let's add a class to it. Now let's put the class as heading yellow. Let's just save it. Go to our style.css. Now, how do we select a class? Yes, a full stop or a period with the name of the class. The name of the class was heading yellow. Go back to style.css, just paste it and just change the color to yellow. Save it. And yes, you can see that the color is changed to yellow. I should have chosen a better color, but it's okay. You can see the difference. Now, the basic difference between IDs and classes. Now, IDs are very unique. Classes aren't unique. Now, each element can have only one ID. But on the other hand, you can use same classes on multiple elements. Right. So if I have this class heading yellow, I can reuse this and I can put it to my UL. And you can just see the changes that my entire UL is yellow in color right now. Okay. Now each page can have only one element with that particular ID name. Now, and on the other hand, for classes, you can have multiple classes on the same element. For example, if I write here another class bg blue for the button, or let's not do it here, let's just try it out here, bg blue. Let's just save it. Let's go to our CSS file. Now this is a class name that we have added. We'll just type out bg blue and we'll change the background color to maybe aquamarine and just save it, head back. As you can see, the background color of the entire UL has been changed. Now it has two classes, bg blue as well as heading yellow. So you can have multiple classes, as you can see. Now, information that is reusable should be kept in a class, and information that is totally unique to that particular element should be kept in an ID. Now, CSS won't care if you have the same ID for multiple elements, but it's not a good practice because we'll be using JavaScript as well. JavaScript cares about these IDs a lot because we'll look at that when we learn about JavaScript. So it's convention that we should not repeat the name of the ID. Now let's just try out something cool. Let's first do one thing. Now we have learned about CSS a lot. Now we had learned the three types of CSS: inline, internal, and external. Now what if I apply all these three for the same element? So here I have h1 style color blue violet. Again, in my internal CSS, I have h1 which is color brown, and again I go back here and I have h1 to have color red. So in external it is red, in internal it is brown, and in inline it is blue violet. Now what will be the answer? I strongly suggest that you just think about it for a minute. Which will have more importance? Like, what do you think? It will be blue, violet, brown, or red? Let's just try it out. Once you've saved it, you can head back and it's still blue, violet. It means that we've come across a new concept over here, which is called as precedence. Now, every time, whenever you create inline, internal, and external CSS, the precedence rule is like inline CSS is always greater than internal CSS is always greater than external CSS. Now, what if I have the heading blue ID for this and I even have a class for it? Class heading yellow. Okay, so I have a ID for the p tag which is heading blue, where it shows that it has color blue. I even have a class heading yellow for the same p tag, which shows that the color is yellow. Now what will happen over here? Will it select the ID or will it select the class? Think over it. Okay. As you can see, it is still blue. The p tag is still blue, which simply means that we've come across a precedence rule over here as well. If a particular element has an ID as well as a class, IDs are given more preference than classes. So this is all about CSS and the basics of CSS. Now, any questions? We'll answer some questions over here. And Gurnemat, you can take over.
All right. So it's time for the second part of our workshop today. The second segment of the workshop today is called Level Up. So I'm going to be teaching you some intermediate CSS, and then we will quickly dive into coding our website. So the first thing that I'm going to teach you today is the CSS Flexbox. This is personally one of my most favorite CSS features. You can align, stack, space, elements in so many different ways, and it really makes your job as a developer super easy. And it also helps you in creating responsive designs. Responsive designs are basically designs which quickly accommodate themselves according to different screens. As we know these days, a lot of us use mobile phones, which means all of our websites quickly need to be able to adjust to a laptop as well as a mobile, and even the different kinds of mobile phone screens that we have here. So let's quickly jump onto our VS Code and let's try out some styles. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to try, the first thing that we need to do before we define a flex box is to give the elements a container. So I'm going to create a div over here and I'm going to give it a class of container. Inside this container, I'll create 4 divs. I'll just give them numbers. I suggest you to create a folder and create your index.html file in it. And as a challenge, try to link your CSS file and then just follow along with me. Create your container and the 4 divs inside it. All right. So now that I have a container and 4 divs inside it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to my styles.css and I will select this container. So this container has a class. To select a class, I will use a period followed by the class name, which is container. I'll give it a display value of flex. So this is the first step that we need to take to be able to initialize our container into a flex. Now I'll show you some different flex properties. The first one that we're going to discuss is a flex direction. So what flex direction helps you do is it essentially uh, allows you to stack elements in a particular direction. So there are a lot of values over here, as you can see for this property. If I select a flex direction row, it'll align all of my items in the form of a row. But before we proceed, I'm just going to give my divs some width, some height, and a background color, and I'll teach you how to do that. So as you can see here, inside this div with class container, I have 4 divs. So if I want to select an element which is nested inside another element, I can do that using the greater than sign. I have container, greater than sign, div. So container class, div inside container class. And I just give it a width of 100 pixels, a height of 100 pixels, and I give it a background color of pink. And so that's about it. Now we can head on to, so here in our live server, we can see that there are 4 divs over here. We selected flex direction row, so they are stacked horizontally together in a row. Now, if another property value that I can use for this would be another property value that I could use for this could be flex direction column. If I want to stack them vertically in the form of a column, I'll just press Control S over here and go to my live server. And here I can see in my page that it has rendered these 4 boxes vertically in the form of vertically in the form of 4 boxes. All right, now moving on, let's go back here. So another property that I want to discuss would be flex wrap. So flex wrap basically allows you to wrap elements below the initial element. So in case I have width 500 over here and you know I have 5 divs, and which means that I cannot fit all 500 onto my screen at the same time. But uh, if I wanted to force it, I could just choose the value no wrap for flex wrap, which would mean that it would sort of try to squish all the elements together and show them over here. If you can see over here that all of my 4 elements, even though these are not actually up to scale, it's just squished them together. If I go back and I set flex wrap to wrap, now it's going to wrap the element. So if any element exceeds the screen width, it'll just simply move on to the next line. So I had one 500, the second one for 500 pixels, and the third one just simply moved on to the next line. This was flex wrap. A really important property that you really need to know is justify content. So justify content allows you to align items horizontally. So the first one that we're going to choose will be justify content center. So if I set this width again to 100, what this will do is that all the items, all the content inside my container is going to be aligned right in the center. You can look at it over here. My 4 boxes are right in the center. If I go back and I set justify content to another, a really cool property that you're going to be using a lot will be space between, space evenly, and a space around. So the first one that we're going to discuss is a space between. What space between essentially does is that it gives equal spaces between all the elements. So if I go and check it out over here, you can see that there's an equal space between all of my 4 boxes. Another one is a space around. So I've just pressed Control S. If I go back here and I see, you'll see that there's a little more space within the elements, but a little less outside. So why this is basically happening is because it is giving an equal amount of space on either sides of each element. So if this was one unit, you have one unit and then another unit, another unit. So that's how you have that's how space around works. And we have space evenly, which is probably my most favorite. Uh, it'll just space all the elements evenly and give equal space between and around it. So this just makes our job easier in so many cases. The last property that we're going to discuss for flex will be align items. So what if you wanted to align our items vertically? For this, let's assume my container has a height of 100 viewport height. Viewport height is a relative unit which uh, basically gives you the height of your screen. So viewport height 100 means 100% of the viewport height. So 100% of what you can see on the web page is 100 viewport height. Similarly, you also have 100 viewport width. We're just going to use 100 viewport height. Now what's going to happen? Now what I want over here is that I want to align my items right in the center, but horizontally. So I'll set the align items property to align items center. Now I'll just go back and I'll check. So if this is 100 viewport height, I have my 4 divs right smack in the center. You can also use different property values for align items such as flex end and flex start. You can go check out and you can go explore them. It's a lot of fun. Now let's get on to coding the nav bar of our website and the very first section of our website. So I wanted to create a new folder and set up an index.html and a styles.css. I've linked the CSS over here and I'm going to give this a title of my name because it's going to be my portfolio website. The first thing that I'm going to do in my body is that I'm going to create a container for my navigation bar. So before we jump onto this, I just want you to look at the design once again. So what we're going to do over here is, as Anshul taught you about lists, we're going to use a list for this portion. So we're going to create 3 list items over here, which will help you navigate through the website, and we will create a brand over here or something like your initials. So, and this entire thing is going to be a flex box, and some of you might be able to tell that we've put a space between these two sections. So what we're actually using here is the justify content space between. So let's go back and create a container for our navbar. So I'll create a div with the class navbar container, and I'll create a nav element inside it, inside which I'll create a span element. So just like divs, we also have the span element. But what happens with divs is that each div shows up in a different line, but spans always show up in this same line. So I'm just going to give this span a class of brand, and I'm just going to put some random initials here, and I will create an unordered list over here. And inside this unordered list, or UL, I will create list items, LI, and I want 3 list items. One thing you might have noticed over here in my design is that I can click on each navigation list item and it will navigate me to a different section of the website. So how we're going to do that is we're going to create an A tag. An A tag not only allows you to go to different website, it also allows you to go to different sections within a website. So what I'm going to do here is to my different sections of the website, I'm going to give them IDs, and if I just directly put their IDs over here, if I click on this link, it'll take me to that section of the page. So I'll just give this ID of home, and I'll give it some text over here, home. So later, when I create my home section and my about section and my contact section, I can just directly click on this link and it'll take me to that part of the website. So I have that ready. Now let's see what it looks like right now. So that's what it looks like right now. I have my span with my initial followed by an unordered list. I'm just going to go back to my website, and what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to start to style this. So the first thing that I need to do over here is to initiate a flex box in this nav. So I'm just going to give this nav a class of nav, and I will select it over here as nav, and I will give it display property of flex as we discussed earlier. And I'm just going to do justify content space between, as I told you before, because we want space between the span element and the UL. If I go look at it now, this is what it looks like. It's spread across the entire width. Okay, going back. One thing we want to do before we create, or when we mostly create a nav bar, in almost 95% of the cases you might have noticed in websites, the navigation bar is always stuck at the top. This is a really important and a good feature to have in a website. So for this, I'll give the navbar container a position property of a fixed. So the position property also contains a lot of values. You can go into it in a lot of depth. One important property is fixed. This will keep your content fixed right at the top of the screen. And we will also give it a width of 100% because we want our navbar to stretch across the screen. Right now you won't be able to notice anything, but after I add more content to it, you will notice that I'm able to scroll across the screen and my navbar will still stay at the top. But one thing I want to do now is that I want to fix this LI and make it look a little similar to what my design is. For this, I'm just going to select this UL contained inside this nav class. So I have nav and then I have UL. I'll just give it a list style type, a list style of none. So this list style property allows you to style a list in different ways. None will just simply remove the bullet points. If I go look at it now, you'll see that my bullet points have simply disappeared. And I also want to remove the hyperlink feeling from my links. So what I'm going to do is inside this nav UL, I'm going to select an li again using the hierarchy tags. And I'm just going to set the text decoration property. Inside this li, I also again need to select the anchor tag. So I will just set the text decoration to none. So this property basically helps you style text in different ways. If you check it out, it has different values. Uh, I'm just going to go with none for now, and you can explore the rest of them later. This has removed the underline off of my UL tags. So one thing I'm going to do now is select my li tag, and I want to make all of them appear in a single line. For this, again, I can use the display property, but I'm not going to use flex. Another property I can use is inline. So this will allow all of these li elements to appear in a single line. If I go back and I check it out, it's all in one line now. One thing I'm going to do now is give my nav a little bit of padding so it looks a bit better. The padding that I want to give is according to my screen width. So that'd be 0 and 10 viewport width. I have a padding of 0 at the top and then 10 viewport width on both the sides. So padding can be given in multiple ways. You can either just directly select a value such as padding top or padding left, bottom or right or whatever. But another thing that you can do is that you can just simply give it two values. So the first value will be considered for the top and the bottom, while the second value will be considered for the left and the right. So I'm just giving it a 10% of the screen width on both the sides. If I just go check this out, this is what it looks like. It now has padding on both the sides, which is pretty cool. But what I don't like about it here is that this span is stuck right at the top, but my flex is somehow, my UL is somehow right in the center. So for this, I'm going to go back to my flex again. And I'm just going to set the align items property to center. And now it looks about right. Now another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give my li tags a little bit of padding on each side because they look really odd. So, and they look really switched up together. So I'm just going to give them a little padding on the top as well, 0.5 rem, and padding on the side of 2 rem. So rem is a relative unit. It basically takes up the default size that you have set in your device, and then 2 rem would be 200% of that, and 0.5 would be 50% of that. So I have some padding here. Now it started looking like a nav bar. So I'm just gonna go back and try to style it and make it look exactly like my page. So for the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select the entire body over here, and I'm gonna set its background color to a hex using a hex code. So a hex code is basically a 6-digit or alphabet code which can be used to define colors. I have 161616. I will just go and check that out. It's no, it's for a really cool dark theme, and I'll also give my navbar container the same uh, value, because by default each container is transparent, so you may not see it now, but once it might, if it scrolls onto onto different content, it might look weird and transparent. So we'll just put that up now. Another thing that is really important is that HTML by default has some styles given to the body. It has some margin and some padding set, but we want to have our own clean slate and we don't want any weird margins showing up. So we'll just set the margin and the padding to 0. That's about right. Now we'll try to style our list items. We'll also try to make the font look nicer. So the font that we're using is Montserrat, but we don't have Montserrat by default uh, in HTML. So we'll head on to Google Fonts, which is fonts.google.com. Just head on to this website quickly and type in Montserrat. So I can see it here. I use this font quite often. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use this for my portfolio website as well. I'll use the regular style. I'll just click on this button, select this style, and I'll move to the embed tag. So the embed tag basically has instructions on how I can basically call this font without having to locally install it in my device, which is also something you can actually do. It says to embed a font, copy the code into the head of your HTML. So I'll just copy this link, which has a reference to this Google font Montserrat, and I'll just go back to my index.html and I will paste this font over here. Another thing it tells me is that in CSS, if I want to specify this family, I will use this property font family and set it to Montserrat, and the blanket family name, that is sans serif. So I'll just copy this as well, head back. I'll just control C and I'll head back to my my styles.css this time, and I'll give the entire body this font family. So I've set my font family to Montserrat, and now I will just check out how my website actually looks. It started looking a lot better and I really like the font size, but I'm just going to change the color of this font. I'm going to give the entire body a color of white. But for these LI items, I want this blue color that I have. So I'm just going to set the color to 54DCF2, which is my hex code that I have over here. Control S and I'll just go check it out. Uh, but okay, but it's it's still sort of small. Okay, I need to add a semicolon after my CSS, and I'm also gonna change the font size of the entire nav to 1.5 rem. So if I head back now, I still don't have the color, and that is because it's putting the color for the list item and not the anchor item. So this teaches us a lesson, which is that an anchor item's default hyperlink color will always write the color that you decided before. So you specifically need to set the color for the anchor item. I'm just going to control S and I'll head back, and now it looks absolutely perfect, and this is how I wanted it to look. Now let's try and code our first page. So before we do that, let's just check out our styles, our design again. So if you try to visualize this in the form of a flex, if you try to visualize this in the form of a flex, this is sort of two elements over here which are stacked in the form of a row. So the first one covers about 30% of the space, while the second one covers about 70% of the space. This contains an image which has circular and a border, XYZ, and this one has some name under it, and this also has some text in it. So let's try to code that. Heading back to my index.html, now I'm going to create my first section. I'm going to use a section tag to divide the different sections. And I need to give the first section an ID of home. Why I am doing this is because I'm referencing an ID in this href to help this link jump onto the home section of my website. So I've created this. Inside this, I'm going to create a container. I'll just create a container, a div with a class of container, and I'll create two more divs inside it. The first one will have a class of image section, while the second one will have a class of designation section. So the image section, as we saw before, needs to have an image inside it. I'm just gonna import an image onto here. So you can just head back to your folder and you can either drag or drop an image over here or try to add it. So I'm just gonna choose this image of myself and I have it over here. I'm just gonna drag it into this folder over here. Okay, that's not working. So let's just head back and drag it from here into our buildyou.com folder. I have that over here now. That's a picture of me. Okay, I'm just gonna close that off and I'm gonna go back to my index.html. So inside this image section, I can now reference an image. So I'll just create an image tag and I'll give it a source of the name of the image, which is gkt.jpg in this case. And I will set an alternative text, which is just me. And under this, I'm going to give it another heading. So I'm just going to give it a heading H4, let's say, with my name. And in the designation section, I'm going to create three headings, so H1, H2, and H3. I'll just put some text over here about me, how I would like to define myself. So front end developer, public speaker, cheesecake enthusiast. That's about it. Now let's head back and see what it actually looks like. So you can see here, this image is super huge and this text is just coming right below it, which is not what we want. So we will go back and style it. The first thing that I want you to do is initialize the class container as a flex. I want all of my items to be right in the center, and I also want to give this container a certain height and a certain padding. So I'm just going to give it a padding of 15% on the top and about 10% on the right side, 5% on the bottom, and about 10% on the left side. So again, I've used a viewport width and viewport height. Another thing you might have noticed is that I've now used 4 values for padding. This is another way of adding padding. So this basically runs clockwise. So 15 viewport height is right for the top, 10 viewport height is for the right side, 5 is for the bottom, and 10 is again for the left side. So I have that. I also want all of my content to be aligned horizontally right in the center, and also be aligned horizontally, also be aligned right in the center vertically. Control S, let's head back and see what it looks like now. So yep, I have my image and my text, and I have all of my designations right below it. Now I will go back to my styles.css, and I want to change the width of my containers. So I'll set the image section class to have a width of 30%. And I want the designation section to have a class of a width of 70%. So basically 30 and 70 is according to the width of my container. My container here by default is going to have a width of 100 viewport width, which is the 100% of the screen. Therefore, the image section and the designation section will take 30% of the container and 70% of the container. But again, I've also given it some padding. So it'll actually consider the width of this content part of the container, and it'll exclude the padding. So I have that. I also want to resize my image inside my image section. So I'll use the greater than tag to select the image. I'll set its width to 200 pixels, its height to 200 pixels, which should look about fine. If I save this and I head back and I check it out, this looks pretty great at this point in time. This is my flex. It has some padding, but none of these are actually aligned in the center. These two contents, the content boxes are actually aligned in the center, but the content that's inside them is not aligned in the center, for which I'm going to use a property text align. So text align will help me align all of my items, all of my text and my images right in the center. So if I want to give two sections the same value, I can actually select them together as opposed to writing CSS again and again. So I'm just going to select image section over here, followed by the designation section. So both of them are separated using a comma, and then I just give it a property text align and set its value to center. Another thing I'm going to do over here is the image that I had selected, I want it to be circular. So a property that you can use to make any div or any image circular is border radius. It basically sort of tries to curve the edges of each the div or the image that you're selecting. If I set this value to 50%, it will curve my entire image to a circle. So this is what it is looking like right now, and it's pretty close to what I want, but I think I want the height of this section to be a lot more, and I want to give it some padding, and I want to change the font to make it look exactly like my design. So I'm gonna give it a border of, I'm gonna give it a border. This border property can have values which can be, which needn't be defined using, in separate lines. You can just do it together. So the first value that I'm going to give it is 5 pixels, which is going to be the width of the border. The second thing is going to give the style of the border. So I just want a solid color. So I'm going to give it the keyword solid, followed by uh, the color of the border that I want, which is FA788D. So I'm just going to give it a border of 5 pixels solid, and I'm going to go look at how that looks. That's exactly how I want it to look. Now I'm just going to style my text a little bit. So I think for the H4 that I have over here, um, my name, I just wanted to give it a font size of 1.5 rem. And I also wanted to have the same color as that of the border, so I'll just set the color to with the hex code that we used earlier. So I think that looks about right. One thing you might have noticed is that this image looks sort of squished. So while I was trying to reduce uh, the width and the height of the image, it actually did not retain the ratio of my image. So if I want to retain the ratio of my image, I can use a, a property called object fit and set it to cover. So if you go check this out now, it'll look a lot better. We'll just quickly style our fonts as well. So we have an H1 and H2 and an H3. We're just going to use the grouping selectors here, and if in case we need to use the headings later, we'll just figure out a different way to do it. So for H1, we're going to use a font size of 3.5 rem, and we want the font weight to be bold, which is how an H1 is by default. I also don't, so for the second one, I think I'm gonna go with a font size of 2.5 rem. And the third one, I'm just gonna leave it the default. But for what I want in my design is that I want H2 and H3 to be a little lighter. So I'm gonna use this property called opacity. So the opacity basically helps you set the opacity of the element that you're selecting. So if I set it to 0.75, the element won't be entirely solid, it will be translucent. So I have opacity 0.75 over here. I'll set this opacity to 0.5 over here. And one thing I want to do over here is that I want to remove all of my margins from my H1 and H2 and H3, and you'll see why. If we look at how our website looks right now, I think it looks about right, but there's a little too much of margin between these two. So I'm actually going to remove the margin for all of the H tags that I used over here. I'm going to select all of them together, H1, H2, and H3, and give them a margin of 0. And now what I'll do is, to this H2, I'll just give it a margin of top and bottom as 1 rem. So in case I've already defined the style over here as H2 and succeeding it in the CSS file, I again change the same style. The one that is written after is always overrides the one that is written before. So I have it over here. It looks pretty good according to me. I just need to change the height of my container a little bit and then we'll be good to go. We'll just set the height of this container to 70% of my of the height of my screen. I have a padding of 15% at the top and 5% at the bottom, and I've set the height to 70%. I've set the height to, let's set the height to 80%. So 80 plus 15 plus 5 is 100%. So I want the entire thing to show up right at the center. So that's our navigation bar and our first section done. Now let's go back and let's take some questions. Now let's moving on to the next part, the next part which is the grids, which is CSS grids. So the CSS grid module basically allows you to align and stack and position items. But what makes both CSS and the grid, CSS grid and CSS Flexbox different is the fact that grid allows you to align items in two different directions, while Flexbox only allows you to either align items in one direction, that is the row, or in the form of a column. So let's quickly head on to our VS Code and try this out. So I've already defined a container over here and I've created 4 divs inside it. I can go to my styles.css and I can set this container. I need to initialize this container as a grid. So I will give it display property of grid, and I already have these divs set to a width of 100 pixels, height of 100 pixels, and background color pink. Let's look at a few grid properties. So the first grid property that we're going to check out is grid template columns. Grid template columns allows you to set the width of your columns as well as the number of columns that you want. So I have 4 divs over here, and what I want to do is that I want to align each div in one column, but I want it to space itself automatically. So I'll just use the keyword auto 4 times. So now if I just go and check it out, this is what it looks like. There are 4 different columns of equal width. I'll go back to my styles.css and let's something similar to auto is the fraction. So if you just use this fr unit, you can use the fraction. So if I want I want the second and the fourth column to be twice as large as the first and the third column, I can use this. If I head back, now this is what it looks like. You can notice this is about about one part, and this could be about 2 parts. This is also again 1 part and 2 parts. Now going back, you might be wondering about how tedious it is to keep defining these values even if another thing I didn't show you is maybe if you wanted to code the actual pixel value, the width in another unit, you could probably do something like this. But really, this is pretty tedious in my opinion. So you can just go for a life-saving function, which is the repeat function. So the repeat function asks you to input two values inside it. The first value is the number of columns that you want to have, and the second is the width that you want to have for each column. So we just have 4 followed by auto, and it will do exactly the same thing as writing auto 4 times, as you can see here. So this was the first property. Another important thing that you need to learn before we move on is grid lines. So uh, this is how a grid essentially works. If I have a grid over here with 3 columns and 3 rows, uh, the the very first box in this grid would range from the first its row would range from the first line to the second line, and its column would range from the first line as well as the second line. So the lines are always start from 1 and then they go to n plus 1. So if I have 3 columns, it will always be 3 plus 1 4. So why this property grid column of 1/2 or grid row of 1/2 is important is because what if I want to define this box with a width of 2 columns and a width of 2 rows? So in this case that you're seeing, this doesn't actually seem to have a point grid column 1/2 because it's always going to show up this way. But but in the design that we're going to take, if we take a closer look at it, and if you try to visualize this in the form of a grid, you will notice that this is about 3 columns and about 2 rows. This is a grid. So what I want to do is that I want this about division to range 2 columns and 2 rows. For this, I'm going to use the grid row and the grid column property. So let's define our about section. So we'll define another section. We'll give it an ID of about. And inside this section, I'm going to create 3 divisions. So the first division is going to have a class of skills. The second one is going to have a class of education. And the third one is going to have a class of about. So I'm just going to give them some text before we proceed with our styles. For the skills section, I'm just going to create an h1 tag over here and give it skills over here. I'm going to give all of these an h1 tag. So education and similarly for about. And I want to have let's just use h2 tags over here. So in my skills, I could probably write web development, app development, UI, UX, and much more. Similarly for education, just try to add a little bit about your educational history if you can. I'll put an H2 tag over here, higher secondary school. A P tag maybe because I want this to be a little smaller. This is going to talk about which school. I'm talking about another H2 and I'll just write P tech, computer science, and a paragraph tag. bit valor. So I have that right now. And for my about section, I'm just going to add some random text. So something really cool you can use in VS Code is this shortcut to add random text, for which I can just type in a lorem and then type a couple of the number of words that I want after it. So here I'll just choose 56, pretty random. I'll just add another paragraph after this, and one thing I wanted my design is a button, so I'll just give this button a class of btn, and inside this I will write download CV. That's about it. Let's go see how this actually looks. So let's scroll down. Right now all of it is just showing up together one after one, but I want it to look like a really cool div. So for this I'm gonna put all of this inside a container and then initialize a grid inside that container. Heading back to my styles.css, and you can also add comments in CSS using what I just did, which is a forward slash asterisk and then end it with an asterisk and a backslash and another forward slash. So about, so I'll just select the grid container over here, give it a display of grid. What I want in my grid is that I want it to have 3 columns of equal width. So I will use the repeat function, and the first value that I'm giving it is the number of columns that I want, which is 3, and I want all of them to be of an equal width. I'll also give this grid container I want to give the about section. I'll just select it using the ID, and I want to give the about section some padding. So I'll just give it bit of padding at the top, 15 viewport height, what I did earlier, and 5 viewport height, 10 viewport width, and I just gave this grid template columns. I'll also set the grid rows to 200 pixels maybe. And now if we head back and check it out, this is what it looks like. So it's just simply created 3 columns, and all of the 3 are now contained inside this. But this is not what I actually want. I want this to range in the first column in the first row. This should be contained in the first column, the first column, but the second row, and this should cover the last 2 columns and the first 2 rows. So we will use the grid template and the grid rows properties for that. Let's head back to our styles.css. And let's get into it. So for the first one, I have skills. As I just stated, I want the grid column to be the first column. So the first column always ranges from line 1 to line 2, and grid row also from 1 to 2. And for education, I have something similar because I wanted to be in the first column, but I wanted to be in the second row. So I just set the column as the same thing, but for the row, I now want to start from the second row, which ranges from the second line to the third line. And for my about class, I want it to range from the second column, second to the third column. So line 2 to 4. This will be for grid column, and for grid row, I will go for 1, 2, 3 because I wanted to go from the first to the second row as well. Now let's go check it out. this is what it looks like right now. This is pretty big, so it's sort of exceeding my columns. Let's just try to style this in a little bit better manner, and then it'll be clearer. So I've already predefined some styles for the H1, H2, and H3 tags, which is why it's showing up in a really weird manner, but I'll quickly fix that over here. Now what I'm going to do is I will select the H1s that are present inside the grid container. So I will choose the class of grid container and then a greater than sign to show hierarchy. The H1 inside this grid container will contain a font size of 2 rem and a color of the blue that we had earlier. And now similarly I'll select the H2 tag which is contained inside a grid. So this overrides the grouping selector. And then I have grid container H2. I have font size set to I just want the font size to be 1 rem for this one. And earlier for the H2 I had actually reduced the opacity, but in this case I just wanted to remain to have the normal value. So I'll just to override the style that I had before, I'll set the opacity to 1 and I'll give it a margin of 1 rem and 0 rem. 0. You don't need to mention the unit for 0. So I just wanted to have some top and some bottom margin for when it is defined. And I also have some p tags which I wanted them to be a little lighter than the other text. So for the p tags, I just wanted to have the same font size, but I don't want it to have the default font weight. The font weight basically allows you to find how bold or how light your weight is. How font weight property basically helps you tell how bold or how light your text is. So by default, the earlier in so by default the p tag has a font weight of 400, so we needn't change that. We'll just set another property that we're going to discuss over here is line height, which we're going to set to 2. So the line height basically defines the height of a single line of text according to its the text size that we have. So if I set the line height to 2, each line will be twice the size. So this is just going to create a lot of spacing between the text. If you go look at it now, this is what it looks like. So you might have noticed that, my CSS actually did not work. And that is why, because the hierarchy that I've used is not correct. So inside the grid container, I have skills as well as I have education and I have about, let me just use the Chrome developer tools here. So I'm just going to press Ctrl Shift J and I'm going to right click on this element and I'm going to inspect it. So what's happened here is that it still has the same properties as before, which is what I don't want. So I'm going to try and figure out what my problem over here is. I have the grid container class, and inside this I'm selecting all the H1s and all of the H2 tags. But I'm going to try to select it using skills. So this is going to be the correct hierarchy. So it's grid container and then the skill section and then the H1 section. But I also want to do this for the education section. So I'm going to select 2 of these together by separating them with a comma. An easier way to probably do this would be to just give this H1 a class and give this H2 a class. But I think this gives us a better idea about how our hierarchy works. So I've just done it this way to make the concept a bit clearer. Just going to change that quickly for everything else. If I look at it now, it looks pretty cool and it looks pretty similar to what we're trying to go for over here. Just, I think I've used a different tag over here and that's why it's not showing up in the correct manner. Okay, we haven't actually selected the about over here as well. So we're just going to select the about is for this H1 as well. So that's about it. I think that's for our font size. One thing I want to do is that I want all of my grid containers to have a background. So I'll just select all of them together. Skills, education, followed by about, and I'm just gonna give all of them a background color of a dark gray, which has the hex code 232D2F. And if I go check it out now, it looks a lot cooler, but you will notice that my grids are sort of squished together and I want to give them a gap. So for this, I'm going to use a property called grid gap. Grid gap helps me give the same amount of gap between my rows as well as my columns. If I just want to give a different gap for my grid column or grid rows, I can also just simply use the grid gap column property or the grid gap row property. So I'll just give all of this the same 30 pixel gap. And one last thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to give these a bit of a border radius of about 10 pixels. So they get a little bit rounded and they're going to look a lot better according to the design, because I don't want them to be all edgy. And we'll just give these a bit more padding as well on all sides to REM. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly show you how to style your button in a better fashion. So we have the class btn given to our button. We're going to give the button a padding of 1 REM. Let's just go with 0.5 REM on top and the bottom and 5 REM on both the sides. Buttons don't actually take up the same font family as the rest of your document, so we're gonna have to set font family Montserrat again. They also have some border by default, which I do not want, so I'm just gonna set border to none. I'm also gonna give it a bit of a border radius because I want to be able to, I don't want it to have clean edges. I'm just gonna give it a border radius of 5 pixels. Now let's go see how it looks. It's still white in color because that's how it is by default. So we're just gonna go and give it a background color of that nice salmon pink color that we had before. So it looks a lot better, but I definitely want this to be a bit bolder, and you can't actually notice it over here, but this is also not set to the correct line height that I want. So I'm just gonna go and check this out again. This is inside the edit about section, which I again haven't chosen, so I'm just gonna go with grid container, and then inside that I'm going to select the about section. Inside that I'm going to select the p tag, so that's fine. I also think I want my button to have a little bit more padding on top, so I'm just going to make this 1 REM. I also want the font weight to be a little more. So the font weight has a lot of values. So a paragraph text has a regular value of 400, but what you would call bold text would have a font weight of 900. So you can also write 900 as here, or you can just simply write bold, and both of them will work the exact same way. Another thing you'll notice over here is that this is actually not 2 rows, but it is 3 rows, and that is because this content is actually exceeding two rows. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to increase my row height a little bit. So I'm just going to do Control F for grid template rows. I'm going to set it to 50 pixels. And voila, that looks about right. And I think that's what I was trying to go for. So that is up for that is it for our second segment. Anshul, on to you.
Just a minute. Hey guys, so now we've made the two pages. The first page is completed, the navbar is completed, and the about section is also completed as well. Now we'll move on to our final section where we'll make the contact form as well as the footer. So let's get back to coding. Let's create a new section. As we know, we have created two sections over here already. Let's create a section. Let's give it a class name of contact. Let's give it an ID, contact. Let's create some div tags. Now, there's a specific trick that you might have noticed while Gurnemat was coding as well. If you want a specific class with your div tag, you can just type div dot the name of your class. The name of the class should be contact form, and just press enter, and you will have your class and a div tag created. Now, one second, we must have a container as well because we are using containers and grid systems. So let's create grid container, and let's create a div tag with class. Yep, contact form. Perfect. Now let's create another div tag which will contain the heading. Now let's just type here form text, and this will contain our heading for the form. Let's try some h2 tags. Like you can say drop your details down below. Yeah, we can say that. And just take another h2 tag and just make sure that we ping them so all my viewers have pinged you. Cool. So we've completed this division where we are making the form text. Now let's just save this, take a look, and it's gonna look horrible. Just a minute. Yeah. Yep. It doesn't look good, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. Now, what's next? Now we've completed the form text. Now in this class, we need to create some input tags. So let's type input. The type is going to be text, and this input type will have the placeholder as your name. So this input tag is going to take input, is going to take your name as your input. Let's add some class to it, and let's be font input. Now, what is a placeholder? Now, let's talk about the placeholder is an attribute which kind of specifies a short hint for the user. So whenever the user goes to your input field, he'll see that there is expected the expected value in the input field, and whenever you click on the input tag, it will disappear when you start typing or when you click on it. I'll just show you how it looks. So the placeholder here is name. Save it, head back, and you can see that we can see a name over here. You can even use a label, but in this design we're going to use a placeholder. As soon as I click or start typing, the placeholder is removed. Okay, so let's create another input which will take email. I don't need the name because we're not sending it to a server. Let's have the class again. We'll reuse this class because it should have the same design. And just a minute, just copy paste this, and the placeholder is going to be email, and the place is going to be the same. Now let's add text area as well. Now text area has columns, ID, number of columns and number of rows. So let's just put number of rows as 5, and as the design is similar, we'll reuse this class form input. Yep. Now we've completed the heading of the form, the input tags that we are going to use, the text area where the user or the visitor is going to type their message, and finally we'll have a submit button where we're just going to ask the user to send the details. So let's give it another class of submit button. Now let's just save it and let's take a look at the raw HTML that we have written. Yep, it looks yuck, but yeah, we'll make it all right. Let's go back to our styles.css. Now let's select the grid container first, the grid container 3. Let's add some properties. Now, as you've seen, we need the display to be flex. We're going to justify the content, the center. Cool. That's great. Now let's head back, save the file, and yeah, everything is justified in the center, and the display is flex. Right. Now, what is the next thing that we have to take a look at is this class, contact form. So let's add this contact form. We need some background color. Let's apply the background color as hash. We'll just use this. Looks nice. Then we'll have a border radius as 10 pixels. Put it as 18 pixels, it would look better. And then we'll have a padding so that there's no cluttering of elements. 2 and then the flex direction, as Gurnaim mentioned and we studied about, should be column. Flex direction should be column for this particular section. Then we we need the text to be aligned at center. So text aligned with the value center. And we'll have a width for the whole form as, let's take 350 pixels and let's take a look at it. How does it look? Yep, it's looking somewhat better. I will even add some margin at the end. Margin, and let's add 3 rem. And yeah, looks pretty well. Now we need these H2 tags and the form text. So let's select this form text. Let's try that out. Let's add some CSS to it. Don't need any padding because we've already given its parent some padding. Then we require some margin at the bottom for all the elements as 2:1. We need the line height as 1, and again we need the text align property to be set center. Yep, let's take a look. Okay, looks better now. Now this looks pretty big compared to the other font size. So let's just select the form text, and inside the form text we have our H2 tags. So let's just select them and have the font size as maybe 0.5 rem. Let's take a look at it. That's pretty small. 1 rem. Yeah, it's okay. 1.3 rem is going to be fine, I guess. Yeah. Now we'll add some margin to it. 1 rem. So yeah, when I use margin as 1 rem, it means that top, right, bottom and left will have 1 rem. But if I specify the property as 2 rem, it means that the left, the top and the bottom will have 1 rem as a margin, and the left and the right will have 2 rem, right? And if you want each and every direction to have a different margin, so you should always go in the clockwise direction, that this is going to be top, this is going to be right, this is going to be bottom, and this is going to be your left, right? So we need only 1 rem over here and 0 here. Then we'll add some, we don't need any padding over here. And let's just set the font weight to 500. Save it. Okay, 700. And yeah, it looks much better now. Now let's select the next. Now let's style these input tags. The class is form input, form input, and we'll have some border radius. We'll set the border radius for 10 pixels. Then we don't want any border to come, we just need the radius, so border will be 0. Similarly, we need to change the background color. The background color will be #1616. We're going to reuse the color again. Then the color of the text is going to be white over here. Next, we need to align the text to left, and we'll set the width property to be 90% and just take a look at it. How does it look? Yep, it looks nice. And we need to add some padding, so there is no cluttering as we saw it now. Let's put it as 1 m. And we need some margin as well after every element at the bottom. We'll put this as 1em as well. And we need to define the font family as well, just in case it doesn't overwrite. Yep. Save it. Take a look at it. Yeah, it looks much better now. Yeah. Now we'll just define the font size as well to be 1 rem. And once we've done this, yeah, it looks much better now. Now what we need to do is we need to add some properties after we click on this, right? And we need to change the color of the placeholder as well. It will look much beautiful. And have we added some? Oh, we've not added any placeholder over here to our text area. Just make sure you add some placeholder here. Your message. Yep, it's coming up. Yeah. Now the next thing is we need the placeholder which is inside every form input. We'll add a pseudo class over here. And we'll have the color to be white and the font size should be 1 rem again. Let's just check it out. Yeah, it looks much better now. Similarly, when we click on it, on the input, we should add this focus pseudo class. Now we can just take all the inputs and add this focus just by selecting the group. As background color be white and the color of the text would be white. Let's just take a look at it. Yep. When we're typing something, okay, it should be black, shouldn't be white. Save it. Yeah. Okay, we did not do it. We did not do it for the text. So yeah, we can just select form input only. Yeah. Now, as you can see, there's this white border coming when I'm focusing on it. It's a default outline that you get on the input tags and the text areas. And if you want to remove it, you can just go and just put the outline property as none. Yep. Let's take a look at it again. Yep, it's gone. That's great, guys. That's great. Now let's go to its styler button. It doesn't look that great. So submit button and we'll add some background color to it first. It's gonna be this. Let's take a look at it. Okay. Need some margin. The top, the margin at top should be 1em. Be great. Then we'll find some width. Let's take a look at it. The width. And the width we'll keep it as 90%. And let's take a look at it. Okay. We'll align the text at center.
and the font size should be 1 and again the font family should be Montserrat. We'll just copy paste this, save it. Okay. Add some padding as well. Yep. And color should be black and the font weight should be bold. Yes. We even have some, we'll even keep the border as none, and we'll have the border radius as 20 pixels. It's too much. Just keep it as 10 pixels. Yeah, looks much better. Now when we hover on this button, we need to show the user that he's on this button. He or she is on this button. So we need to make some changes for that as well. So we'll use the hover class, hover pseudo class, the submit button class. Hover. Yeah, just a minute, there's a type over here. Yeah, it's fine now. We'll change the background color to this color. And what else can we do? We don't need the border again. The border is none. And again, we need no. Yeah, that's all. Let's take a look at it. Yeah. But once we click on it, this outline is coming and the color is not changing. It's again pinkish, but we need bluish. So what we'll do, we'll again use the focus class for the submit button class. Focus. Change the background color to this shade of blue, and we'll keep the outline as none. And we need no border. Yep. So when you click it, there's no outline and the color is blue, that shade of blue. Now that we have made our form, let's now make our footer, which is the last part. Let's go, guys, it's the last part. Let's add an ID over here again. ID footer. We'll add some div class footer. Now inside this footer, now I want this footer inside a footer tag which normally shows where your footer is. So just put this again here, div class inside the footer tag, and then we'll have our icons over here. So let's just keep this class as icon, and we'll have a tag over here. Yeah, and that'll be it. So we'll have 4 icons. And now where will we have these icons? So as you can see that getting if you want these icons, what will a normal person do? They will go on Google in images, they will search for the GitHub icon, then they'll download it. Then after downloading it, you'll have to check the size. If it's right, then you have to copy paste it into your in your project, and then you can use it. But then there will be the width, the height, all these properties will have to change. So to basically get rid of all these problems, we use the font awesome icons. Now, if you want to be a good developer, you should have good icons. And for that, you should use Font Awesome. So let's head over to fontawesome.com. So this is their gallery. They have tons of icons. So just search for GitHub. You'll find the GitHub icon. And as you can see here, you just need to copy this HTML. Just click on it. It will be automatically copied. Go back to this, and inside this, inside the A tag, just copy paste it. Save it. Head back to your document, and you'll not be able to see it. Now, why is that? You need a CDN. So I've just commented out this. Just uncomment it. Save this. The script tag will be available once you make an account on Font Awesome, or it will be shared in the group chat as well, or in the description of the video as well. So just head over back, and you can see that you have some icon over here. Now we'll just copy paste this icon over here. Testing purposes first, and just save it. And you can see we have those 4 icons here, but they are very small. So if you want to increase the size, you can just use the name of the class, which is FA, just FA, and you want the 3x size. Just copy paste it for all of the icons. I'm scrolling. Yes, you have a bit bigger icons now. Now this is all about our footer and the input tags, but we need to have some footer text as well, where you'll have your name and where do you stay. So let's just give this class footer text. Let's use H3 tag, where you'll have your name, and finally where do you stay, and country. Just save it, and you'll have your footer ready. Now let's take a look at it. It looks horrible, but we'll make it look beautiful using CSS. So firstly, the footer group selector, change its background color to this one, as we keep its position to be absolute. Width should be 100% over here, and let's keep it high as 240 pixels. And let's give the property of left is 0. Side back. And let's increase the height a bit. Let's keep it 250. Yeah, it's looking nice. Now let's use the footer class, and we'll have to change the margin here. As top is 2 rem. 1 rem right, 1 rem left, 1 rem bottom, sorry, and 1 rem left. Okay, let's create a bit of issue. Let's not keep anything at bottom. Okay, let's just remove this out. We'll have it for another. We'll just align the text center. Have your icons over here. Now let's use the dot icon. Now we need to display these icons next to each other. So just display in line in a block. and just add some padding. Padding would be 2 rem, top and bottom, 5 rem, right and left. Let's take a look at it. Yeah, it looks much better. Now after the icon, finally have to see that these icons are purple in color and they're not going well with our design. So let's change the color of these icons. Let's just do FAB, which is the name of our class, and just change the color property to, yeah, save it. You can see, yep, we have our icons which look beautiful. Now we just need to align this footer text. Let's go the text, and we need to change the color. Color will be again the shade of blue. Go with our design. We'll align it again, the center. We'll have some margin. Sorry, it's got enter. And have some margin. 1 rem. Finally, there should be no opacity, so it should be 1. And this is how it will look. Just margin top. Yeah. And yeah, we are done with our portfolio website. Everybody did a great job. If you have done it, if you have completed, it's a superb task. Well done, guys. You have your download CV, you have the send, you have all your icons. You can even have other icons over here, and you just have to put your target or your source of your email or your Insta, whatever you have to put, just put it in this href over here, and you'll be done. Now we have come to our final section where we are going to learn about Git, GitHub, what are developer tools, how to host this website, right? So now that we have completed this website, let's learn about, just a minute. Let's learn a thing or two about developer tools. So let's just inspect. Okay. So in this, so what is developer tools? And just so Chrome developer tools. So Chrome developer tools is, to be honest, the best thing that Chrome provides. Like, it's the best debugging tool that you can ever ask for. The Chrome Dev Tool comes with an array of features which help developers like you and me to debug your web apps effectively. And we can find and fix bugs faster. We can try out new stuff, and it's pretty amazing. Let's just try it out over here. The shortcut is Ctrl+Shift+I on Windows. So for example, if you want to select a particular element, now for example, if I want to select Gurnamad's image, so I'll just click on this, select an element, which is Ctrl+Shift+C, and I'll click on that element, and I'll get each and every detail about it. Like, where is it? and the CSS related to it. Now, if I remove this width, you can see that from the class.me, the width has been removed. And this is how it will look when the width has been removed. If I remove the border radius, it will be a square. Now, if I want to change the border radius, I can just double click over here and I can put your 100%, or yeah, 100%. This is how it will look. Now, whatever the changes I make over here aren't going to be reflected in the code that we have created here. It is just trying out stuff so that we can just take a look at it over here and just change whatever you want. Now let's take another element. Let's take this download CV button. Now you see the box over here. Now this is the margin. So you can see there is only 16 pixels of margin over here at the top. The padding at the top and bottom is 16, and at the right and left side it's 80 pixels. Let's try something else. Now if I double click over here, and whatever I type, it's going to be converted into pixels, and if I press enter, it's going to have that property. So you can do a lot of stuff. You can make a lot of changes over here. It's not going to be reflected in your code again. So it's just for debugging purpose or just trying out some new stuff, right? Now there's another feature to it, which is, let's head over to this beautiful website here. Let's just try inspecting it. Now if I click this icon over here, toggle device toolbar, so this will give me this will give me a view of how it will look on a Samsung Galaxy S5. So this is the responsive view that you're talking about. So if you can take a look at it over here, if I want to see it on iPhone X, it would look like this, right? If I want iPad Pro, it will look like this. So this is what responsibility is all about. If I want to check it on a Surface Duo, it will look like this. And if I just re-click it again, this is how it will look on a desktop. Now something cool. Go to your console and just type document dot design mode is equal to on. Just press enter. Now just take a look at it. You can just directly change the text over here as well. Can change it over here. See, it's pretty awesome. This is the design mode when it's on. Can change it over here as well. Yeah, you can dive more deeper into this Chrome Developer Tools and learn a lot. Now we'll learn a bit about Git and GitHub. So just imagine that you're writing a novel with a ton of authors. You wrote the first draft and some authors didn't like a few parts and they changed it. This will happen a lot of times, and eventually you'll find out when you read the last draft, the final draft, that most of the content is changed. But you want to check where my content is changed and who changed it and when they changed it. Just imagine. Now, when you have your copy, you won't be able to find who made the changes. Manually finding these changes is time consuming, tedious, and can prove to be very irritating. So how do we have all the versions of our work along with the detailed information about each change that we have made? The answer is Git, which is the most popular version control system available on the internet, and every developer uses it. So it's like a vault for you on your local machine. So whatever code you have written it creates a local repository for your project, and everything is kept inside that local repository or your local vault, right? Now, why people use Git? Now, project collaborations become very easy. Means you can you can divide a very big project into small modules and assign it accordingly. You can create new features. You can test bugs without affecting your prevailing code. Then there are a lot of features of Git. Now, what is GitHub? There's a huge difference between Git and GitHub. Now, GitHub is a GUI for Git with pretty awesome functionalities. Now, as we know, Git helps us create local repositories. What does GitHub do? It helps us create remote repositories. Means local means it's local on your machine. Remote means it's not on your machine, it's on someone else's server. Right? So if in case of some catastrophic event, your laptop breaks or your hard disk is formatted and all your projects have been lost, what will you do? So it's better that you have a copy of your projects on your own in your own remote repositories on GitHub. So it is one of the most popular and necessary and in-demand skills, which is asked by almost all companies. And we can even achieve open source programming as well. We can check out Hacktoberfest after this. So enough of theory now. Let's implement. Let's make an account on GitHub and push our portfolio website files over there. So let's head back to this. So this is my GitHub account. Now, once you've created a GitHub account, you can just click over here, new repository. You can just name your repository as Portfolio 101, and you can have this is my portfolio website. Now, public means everyone on the internet can see your repository and can make changes to it, but only after you give a green signal to them. Private means no one can see it. Only you are allowed to see it, and only the people whom you select can contribute or see this repository. README file is also important. It just gives a brief introduction or tells you what this whole project is about. And let's just create this repository. So we are creating a remote repository over here. Yeah, so we can upload files. So let's just click on upload an existing file. Now let's choose your file. What is the file? Build you workshop. Let's just open it. And yeah, we need to add all these three. So let's just copy that now. So let them upload. Once they have uploaded, just commit the changes, means the changes are permanent, means you're pushing the changes. So it'll take a few minutes. Once this is done, you'll have all your code on your remote repository and you'll have a copy of it safe and secure over on GitHub. Now you can go to settings, scroll down, and you can see GitHub pages over here. You can just change this none from main and root, just save it. Once you save it, you'll have your own website, your own URL. Your site is published at this URL. Just click on it. Just a minute. Look at folio. asking you guys. I don't know why this name. Gurnamat, over to you.
Okay.
Gurnamat?
Yep. Okay. So I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about some resources you could use as a front-end developer now that you've actually created a website and also hosted it. Whenever you're creating projects in the future, uh, you're going to need you you might get stuck in places or you might not be able to figure out what to do next, for which you can always go back to look at the HTML and the CSS documentation, for which you can go to MDN Docs or W3 Schools. Um, for learning, there are a lot of courses out on the internet. Some are paid and some are free. A great resource that you can use is Free Code Camp. So they have a lot of free courses where you can actually you have code along you have these coding exercises that you can do. So I think that's a really great resource that I would definitely recommend. And of course, YouTube videos. So whenever you want to watch something particular, you're not able to figure it out, just look it up on YouTube. And there are a lot of Udemy and Coursera courses, and you can check out the reviews, and it definitely help you a lot. Now, something really important and something that helps every developer is Stack Overflow. So whenever you want to resolve a bug, if you look it up, most probably the first link that's going to show up is Stack Overflow. So that's really going to be the most important resource that you're going to have as a developer. And don't ever forget to become a good Googler. It takes you really need to know what to Google and how to Google it in the correct way to get the answer that you want. And Google is always going to be your friend, so do not be ashamed to tell somebody that you Googled something as a developer. Developers, even uh, good developers, always Google, and it is uh, actually a skill that you need to have. And with that, we come to the end of our segment today. We hope you all acquired something new and interesting today. Now, the next time when someone asks you to introduce yourself or wants to know about your skill set, you can simply share the link to your website. And we help you save energy and get some remarkable opportunities. Keep developing and feel free to reach out to us in case you have any doubts. We at DSCVIT always look forward towards helping the student community. Uh, you can also follow us on our social media handles to get more updates about our amazing events. And we are also planning a surprise for you in the coming days, so stay tuned. We'll also be taking any questions you might have regarding today's workshop or anything related to front end development. So please go ahead and put your comments down. Yep, that's about it. I'm just gonna end the stream now.